Oh, hi. I'm Owlbear Rogue. Welcome to the cave. We've reached the end of September, one of my favorite months. Every day feels more and more like fall. Is it really fall, or is there just a hurricane happening? It's hard to say, but either way, let's celebrate with one last Halloweeny one-shot while we still have power. I've been putting out a new spooky homebrew one-shot for you every Thursday for the last few weeks. The idea is, if you're someone who likes to break up your routine and do a Halloween-themed one-shot for your players, now you've got a few ideas and a few weeks to prepare. The first one I posted 2 weeks ago is called The Midnight Relic, a gothic horror heist. That is one of my most played, most highly polished one-shots, so be sure to check it out. Classic gothic vampire stuff, runs about 3.5 to 4 hours. The one-shot I posted last week, The Endless Maze of the Scarecrow King, is actually a potential add-on to this week's adventure. Tonight's adventure is called The Hollowwood Huntress. On its own, it runs 2.5 to 3 hours, but if you want to have a longer game, you can start with The Endless Maze of the Scarecrow King, and then go straight into The Hollowwood Huntress. Each can be played separately, or you can put them together for a 2-part adventure that runs more like 4.5 to 6-ish hours. Totally up to you. Both work for PCs level 3 to 5. You can do pre-generated characters or let people make their own, just give them a little background about the setting. It really doesn't make a difference. I will say the two are tonally a bit different. The Scarecrow Adventure is a more family-friendly game, while the Huntress Adventure is a bit more adult. It ups the ante a bit. It's much, much gorier. You definitely need to know your players are comfortable with some more gruesome action. There's also going to be the hint of some sexual activity between some of the NPCs and potentially between an NPC and a party member. So either make sure ahead of time your party is cool with that, or tweak the adventure to exclude those bits. You can absolutely do that. I'm going to describe this adventure to you as if you're running it totally on its own. You will notice as I begin to describe the pitch that there is some overlap with last week's adventure because they are meant to potentially be a 2-parter. But we'll proceed as if you're running this totally as its own one-shot. Here's the pitch for your players. Your party is traveling through the countryside on the way to the estate of a noblewoman, a famous actress named Lady DeBruff. She's hired you as a security escort for her performance at the Hollowwood Harvest Festival, and the timing couldn't be better. You're broke. The journey has been pleasant, even though finances have forced you to make it on foot. The afternoons are golden and just warm enough that you find yourself taking your cloak on and off again a dozen times. The evenings are crisp, and by nightfall you're grateful to have a warm fire to sleep beside. It's been a good harvest this year. People you meet on the road are happy and generous. You arrive at Lady DeBruff's estate right as the sun is beginning to set, talking excitedly amongst yourselves of the potential for a hot meal, a bath, and a real bed tonight. You are a bit surprised as you approach the property. It is extremely well fortified for a country manor. Tall stone walls tower over idyllic fields. You can't even imagine how much it must have cost to move that much stone to this farmland. There are several guard towers that appear very well staffed. A thought starts to tickle the back of your brain. Why would someone with this kind of money and security need to hire your party to escort her on a trip? You tell those thoughts to shut up, though. You need this gig desperately. Maybe her guards are locals. Just well-outfitted farm lads and lasses. You provide a road-hardened expertise. Yes, that's it. The gates swing wide for you as you approach, and you sigh with relief. The deal is real, at least. They are expecting you. As you pass through the walls into the estate, you notice, embedded in the stone, is that chunks of rock salt? Yes, rock salt built into the fortifications, here and there on the paving stones you're walking on as well. You've always heard that salt can be used to ward off the undead. But is that real or just an old myth? And if it is true, Why, oh why would Lady de Bruff need a fort made out of it? That all sounds normal, yeah? Nothing to see here. Lady de Bruff is definitely, totally a normal gal. Don't say that part to your party, though. That is not part of the pitch. With that intro, you're ready to plop your party down into this adventure. Describe the courtyard for them, and Lady de Bruff's personal assistant, a very young, very curt tiefling named Jessamine, coming down to greet them, showing them to their rooms, telling them what time to expect dinner and when they'll be leaving on their trip in the morning, and then you can let them loose. There's a lot of great role play opportunities here at the estate and things for them to discover before they hit the road. First, let's talk about who they're going to meet. I already mentioned Lady de Bruff's assistant, Jessamine. She's got the air of someone who's always too busy to devote their full attention to whatever task is right in front of them. Always in a rush. She has a cosmopolitan air about her, and you might learn that she's actually a city girl, but couldn't pass up the chance to work for her idol, Lady de Bruff. She obviously genuinely worships her and is obsessed with everything being perfect. No detail is too small to get just right for the lady. She doesn't understand why Lady de Bruff is undertaking this journey at all, why she goes every year to perform at the Hollowwood Harvest Festival. It really is beneath her, but she does it every year anyway. It must be because she's such a humble woman, still so in touch with the people. Next are Lady de Bruff's two companions. That's what everyone calls them, but it's obvious that they're her lovers. The first is Tarathiel, a male elf. It can be hard to pinpoint an elf's age, but he seems young. You've never met an elf that seemed that young. Usually they tend to stay at home until they're a bit more mature, but Tarathiel is bored and beautiful. He does warm up quickly, though, to any genuine attention from the party. If they really win his trust, they might start to get the idea that he's a runaway who's somehow found himself in Lady de Bruff's arms. The second lover is Hesta, a dwarven woman. Red hair, big emerald eyes, the longest eyelashes you've ever seen. She's voluptuous, quick to laugh, and has an easy charm. Every bit as beautiful as Tarathiel, but in very different ways. She's a young, aspiring actress herself, and she finds Lady de Bruff both generous and inspirational. Both of the lovers will be joining you and Lady de Bruff for the journey to Hollowwood. You have a little bit of a choice here as a DM. You could choose to make one of the two lovers, either Tarathiel or Hesta, significant to the party in some way. Maybe they're a close friend or relative. Perhaps the party was even hired for this job because they were recommended by that person. If you haven't guessed it yet, later on things are going to start to go poorly. Having one of these two people be of emotional significance to the party could be a tool for you later on. If the adventure reaches a point where it might make more sense for the party to simply flee than to continue and pursue the bad guy, you can entice them with the need to rescue one of these NPCs. At the estate, your party will notice many guards, but not very many servants, relatively. If they think to ask around, they will find out that no one, and I mean no one, they talk to has been in the ladies' service very long. Less than a year for most of them. If you ask about the salts built into the outer walls, no one's ever really thought about it. Probably just some eccentric design choice. As the party sees a bit of the interior of the manor house, it is covered in hunting trophies. The party can learn that Lady de Bruff is a master huntress. It's her favorite pastime when she's not touring. You'll actually be spending the night at one of her hunting lodges on the journey to Hollowwood. Have you noticed by now what I did there? Hollywood. She's a Hollowwood superstar. And you see how long it takes your players to pick up on it. I'm entertained by it. I entertain myself. Anyway, there's a lot of dead animal heads and other taxidermy around the joint. Also, a lot of weapons proudly displayed. Who else is there for them to meet? Oh, yes, Lady de Bruff, of course. You can decide when they meet her. For myself, I would have her lay low the first night and make her appearance the morning they're setting off on the journey. She is, if you haven't guessed already, the monster of this story. And I always say the more distant and mysterious your monsters are, the scarier they are. But if you want them to have her come and meet them the night before when they arrive, have dinner with them, drop lots of innuendo, have opportunities for her to charm or even seduce them before travel begins, you can absolutely do that. Lady DeBruff isn't a young woman, but she is stunning. I picture her as Charlize Theron in her wicked stepmother, Snow White and the Huntsman era. Her charisma score is maxed out. Even though everyone around her and the very vibe of the estate is rigid and uptight, she breezes around, earthy, generous, sometimes breaking out into song. Every once in a while, though, a certain posture or look in her eye betrays the spirit of the Huntress that has filled her home with hundreds of macabre trophies. You have to walk a fine line as a DM with the first part of this adventure. You want to give little hints that things aren't quite on the up and up. When shit hits the fan later, it shouldn't come out of nowhere. But you also can't spook your players badly enough that they abandon taking the trip with Lady DeBruff. You have to be able to believe that they would undertake this mission. Definitely keep the desperate need they have for money that they've been promised at the forefront. And also remember, D&D is a kind of an agreement between DM and players. You're building the adventure to serve your friends, giving them as much freedom of choice as you possibly can. But they also have an obligation to respect the hard work you've put in and take the adventure that you have on offer. If you're playing with a group who doesn't understand that contract, who deliberately throws out or scoffs at hooks that you make up for them for no solid reason, that's something you need to be addressing. So now it's morning and time to start the journey to Hollowwood. Jessamine can meet the party in the courtyard as servants are packing up Lady DeBruff's fancy carriage. She'll tell you you'll be paid half your wages on arrival in Hollowwood, and the rest once Lady DeBruff is returned safely to the estate. The journey is 3 days and 2 nights. The first night will be the most cautious. You'll have to be very careful as you'll be camping. The second night you'll be able to stay at Lady DeBruff's hunting lodge. The luggage, the lovers, and the lady herself all make their way into the carriage, and you're off. Again, it does seem a little odd that none of her very well-armed guards are coming with you. It's just your party. They must have a lot of faith in your abilities. You guys look really cool. You can kind of gloss over the first day of travel through the countryside. If you chose to start this story with the scarecrow one-shot, you might say something about the party giving side-eye to any scarecrows they see or jumping occasionally at the cause of a crow. Describe the rolling farmland starting to come to an end. There's a dark tree line, a forest on the horizon. Describe how they make camp in a clearing in a cornfield. Again, this might make them a little nervous if they've been through the scarecrow adventure, but they put on a brave face. Give them a chance to roleplay again with the lovers, Lady DeBruff, and of course always with each other, over dinner and around the campfire. Lady DeBruff might take this opportunity to really charm, perhaps even seduce one of the party, or several of the party, and run off for a literal roll in the hay. Eventually, she and the elf and the dwarf will retire to sleep inside the carriage, and the party will need to keep watch for the night. Depending on how the party members roll during their turn to keep watch, they may notice a few things. Someone with very keen perception might hear unsettling but very faint sounds coming from the woods, howls and screeches, but the forest is still quite far away. They may hear sounds from within the carriage. Are those sounds of pleasure or pain? Pleasure, surely. Yes, definitely pleasure. All is well, none of our business. Again, now, be careful with that detail. This is a hint at potentially uncomfortable sexual activity. You have to make sure your party is okay with that, or your players are okay with that, yeah. They may also notice, particularly if they're keeping watch from on top of the carriage, that the leather has pulled back in a few spots, revealing that cubes of salt have been built into the structure of the carriage itself. How odd. The next day's travel is uneventful, but a perceptive party might feel an inexplicable sense of unease in the forest. Eventually you come to a crossroads where there's a large, crude cemetery. Strange that that would be here in the middle of the woods. Get spooky with how you describe this cemetery in the fading light. The vibe is very Blair Witch, crude grave markers made of sticks and twine, piled stones with strange symbols. A keen eye / perception roll might notice blocks of salt embedded in the ground around the graveyard. Someone in the party might roll a check to know that burying bodies at a crossroads is meant to keep restless wandering spirits from knowing how to make their way back from whence they came. It's meant to keep them put. The party is startled by a black goat chewing vines off one of the wooden grave markers. Again, someone very perceptive might have a brief moment where they lock eyes with the goat and sense a deep, intelligent evil. But after a blink, nope, no, that's silly. It's just a goat. Lady DeBruff demands they stop and seems angered by the presence of this goat. She leans out the window of the carriage with a hunting rifle and takes a shot at it. She misses and the goat runs off into the woods. You see a moment of nasty anger in Lady DeBruff's demeanor just for a moment before she collects herself. She tells you to turn left at the crossroads. Her hunting lodge is that way. As the carriage turns to the left and continues down the road, I like to pull an Abria Iron Guard and tell the party what they don't see. If you don't know who Abria Iyengar is, you almost certainly do, but if you don't, she's a brilliant DM, and she loves to use this cinematic trick where she describes something the party doesn't see. Now the players have this knowledge, but the characters do not. There's an absolutely priceless video of Brendan Lee Mulligan describing the first time he saw Abria do that and how it pretty much made his head pop off his body and spin in a circle. You should definitely give it a watch. Anyhow, what the party doesn't see is that as the goat runs out of the graveyard, it kicks a chunk of salt embedded in the earth and knocks it loose. The cemetery is no longer perfectly encircled by the salt. Your players know this, but their characters do not. Night falls before the party can make its way to the hunting lodge. As the sun goes down, you're going to describe several things happening all at once. First, your party will notice some movement in the trees. Ghostly figures begin to surround the carriage. You get to decide what these creatures are, depending on how nasty you want this initial combat to be. Spoiler alert for you, the DM, and definitely not for your party to know yet. These undead are not actually interested in your party. They're here to take vengeance on Lady DeBruff, and rightfully so. But they will attack anyone who stands between them and her. Anyone who tries to defend her, certainly. So, knowing your party will probably only fight these guys for a little while should factor into how tough you want to make them. They could be ghosts, they could be zombies. If you're feeling nasty, they could be revenants. I think it's fun if it's a mix of all of the above. Describe the terrible injuries these spirits have. One has a bear trap around its leg, another a knife in their back, another an arm blown off. Just as the party is preparing to battle these dead guys and gals, two ear-splitting screams come from inside the carriage. First from one of the lovers, whichever one isn't significant to your party, and the next from Lady DeBruff herself. If the carriage door is opened, they will see one of the lovers, the one the party cares about the most, is unconscious. And the other, the one who screamed first, is dead. Blood everywhere. Lady DeBruff is screaming, screeching, "Save me! Save me! Protect me! They killed them! They got in here somehow and they killed them!" It's time to roll initiative. And it's also time for me to reveal to you, the DM, what's really going on, so you can decide how to mete out that information to your players. Lady DeBruff is a monster. The only thing she needs protection from is the vengeful spirits of her previous victims. Her lovers and the party itself were brought here, as she brings a group every year, to be her newest victims. She hunts more than just game. You have a lot of options for what kind of monster you want her to be. She could be a monster like a hag, a shape-shifting dragon, a devil. I kind of like the idea of making her an oni, a demonic ogre-like shape-changing monster. You can easily find that stat block online. I know the creature is inspired by Japanese folklore. I don't know how closely D&D lore stuck to that original folklore, but you might want to research Oni in folklore for some inspiration. You could also have her being born as an unremarkable human who made a deal with a powerful evil being. In exchange for beauty and fame and fortune, she must return to this wood, outside Hollowwood, the humble town she grew up in, every year and sacrifice a certain number of souls to that creature. A creature that appears sometimes as a black goat, perhaps. She might be very worried about the number of party members when they first arrive at her manor, something like that. She has a quota to fill, after all. You could just make her a clever, devious, evil human huntress who has set up the woods and her hunting lodge with vicious traps. Or you can give her monstrous features like keen dark vision and smell, claws and fangs. At this moment in time, whatever you decide she is, her carriage and your party are surrounded by the vengeful spirits of those she has killed in these woods. She has also killed one of her lovers and gravely injured the other, and will try to convince the party that the spirits did it. A combat will commence, and depending on the choices you made about Lady DeBruff's true nature, and the kind of big final showdown you're interested in, and of course always the choices your party makes, what they perceive as truth, things can go a lot of different ways. So I'm not going to give you a ton of detail here, because there's a lot of choices for you to make and things for you to fill in. The undead will engage with the party here. They may at some point notice the undead seem to be trying to get to DeBruff more than to them. They might notice also a bloody knife protruding from under Lady DeBruff's skirts. At some point she will leave the carriage and run into the woods. If the party is still trying to protect her, they might pursue her, encountering undead here and there. She might play with them, trying to split the party. There might be traps that she's set in the woods. Classic things. Again, the bear traps, falling into a pit of sticks, heavy things being triggered that slam down from the trees above. She might run around screaming she needs help. They see flashes here and there of a predatory figure in the trees, but they're looking for Lady DeBruff, trying to save her. When one of them finds her, she smiles a wicked smile, thanks them for their service, and gets down on all fours and runs toward them and attacks. The longer there's confusion about her nature and motives, the spookier this part of the adventure is. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways this can go. It can be a battle among the trees, in the dark, the party getting separated from each other, fighting undead if they haven't figured out they don't really have to, fighting off Lady DeBruff herself as she gleefully hunts them, running afoul of those nasty traps. You could also have her take the lover, the dwarf or the elf, whichever one you decided the party cares about, and whisk them away to the hunting lodge. Then the party will have to pursue her there. If you wanted to make this a much longer adventure, the hunting lodge itself could be a whole dungeon they need to rescue their special NPC from. This could turn into them simply trying to flee from the Huntress and her pursuing and trying to pick them off. One of my favorite things that could happen is a smart, perceptive party might ally with the undead to defeat her. As I've said many times before, I like to make character death a real possibility in my one-shots. And if your players are down for that, this is definitely an adventure ripe with deadly possibilities. One fun possibility is if a player does die, you could have a Revenant character sheet waiting for them ready to go, so they can continue joining on in the combat and the adventure from beyond the grave. Maybe everyone dies. Maybe some make it. Perhaps the whole party miraculously lives to see the dawn, and they take their hard-earned fee from the defeated body of Lady DeBruff, Huntress, and Monster. Maybe they just manage to escape and know that if they don't return in the future to do something about it, every year more will die at her hands. And there you have it, friends. Our final Halloween one-shot for the year. I've tried to give you 3 adventures with different kinds of monsters, different tones, different mixes of roleplay, mystery, and combat. Let me know if you give this one a try. If you do, also let me know if you run it on its own, or if you do go ahead and combine it with the endless maze of the Scarecrow King. I love spooky season, and I've had so much fun sharing these one-shots with you. I do have maps for all of them, and I've mentioned it earlier, I am working on the logistics and the legalities of sharing them with you. So that is in the works. I promise, tune in for updates on that. I think for next month's videos, some of them I'm going to be highlighting different spooky, crunchy, spicy fall movies and TV shows, and talking about the things I took from them that I use in my games. I'm definitely going to start with one of my absolute favorites, Over the Garden Wall. That game taught me so much about D&D. Let me know in the comments if there are any other classics you think I should talk about, and if that concept in general is something that you're interested in. As always, thank you for exploring the feminine urge to play Dungeons & Dragons with me, Owlbear Rogue.